A lot of Christians think that, is Bitcoin and crypto, or is that only used for criminals? Is that just drugs and money laundering? So that's a big one that Christians have. That is not true. Less than 1% of Bitcoin's activity is used for crime.
Welcome to the All of Life Show. I am one of your hosts, Stuart White, along with my beautiful and lovely wife,
Alicia White.
Today we have a very special episode for you, as all our episodes are special. However, we veer from our typical topics and discussions, and we delve into the world of cryptocurrencies. Babe, who did we interview on this episode?
Today we interviewed Tim Bertram. He is one of the co-founders of cryptocurrencies.com, which is a platform that's going to be launching in April, and it's going to educate Christians on cryptocurrency and why it matters to them, why they should be interested in it.
Yeah, Tim is an excellent guest. We highly recommend checking out his website, cryptocurrencies.com. He has some merch on there if you want to help support him as he gets his project off the ground. And this is an amazing thing. We have been interested in cryptocurrency for a long time, and we wanted to do an episode about it, but trying to find a guest that could explain it from a Christian worldview and how this may actually have more in line with your Christian values than you maybe thought, that was difficult. So then we came across cryptocurrencies.com and the work that he is getting off the ground, and we were like, we have to get this person on the show. And this episode we think is excellent. You're going to enjoy it. Tim is a wealth of knowledge, and we are excited for it. So without further ado, here is our interview with Tim Bertram from cryptocurrencies.com.
Enjoy.
Welcome to the All of Life Show. We have a very special guest today, Tim Bertram from the cryptocurrencies.com. Cryptocurrencies.com is his website that he is working on, and an entire really mission of sorts to get Christians aware of cryptocurrency in their lives. Can you tell us a little more about that? But first, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it's Tim Bertram. My crypto journey started in my old house back in DC, where I lived with 6 other guys. My buddy Patrick begged me to buy Bitcoin when it was less than $1,000, and I told him he was an idiot. So one of the bigger mistakes of my life, but I slowly learned and kind of caught on to what I figured out was happening within the cryptocurrency space, and I've since changed my mind, and Patrick is not an idiot anymore in my eyes. So
Patrick is rich.
he is. Yes, he is. And I just it hit me that a lot of Christians are really curious about crypto. I visited my dad about a year ago on Thanksgiving up in Minnesota, and he knew that I had bought Bitcoin and other stuff, and he was just really curious about it and had about 80 different questions. So, an hour later, I helped him purchase his first Bitcoin. And, then it just hit me that, like, man, there must be a ton of my dads out there that just don't know enough to get started, or they have a ton of questions, or maybe there's misconceptions about something. And it kind of inspired me to create some kind of resource that people could use to learn about crypto and Bitcoin and Web3 and all that. So that's kind of how it got started.
That is awesome. I know when we first heard about you, I believe it came in the form of an email, and I think it was even the Babylon Bee that was advertising for it. And I was like, what is this? Oh, this is very interesting, because both Alicia and I have had just a great involvement and interest in cryptocurrencies. We've been invested in some since 2018, 19, somewhere around there. And I like you, I had the same regrettable, like around 2013, one of our children was born, and I had this time off. So I was sitting there studying all about these cryptocurrencies, and, back when everything was really cheap. And I was like,
yeah.
oh man, I should do this. And I even thought about maybe I should invest in some mining equipment. And I should do that. And then I was like, no, that's just too much money. And now I kick myself all the time because that would have been a pretty good investment. Even now, it would have been a good investment.
Yeah,
So,
we all learn on our own time. That's for sure. So, I obviously wish I had in 2014, but I really don't think. I think a lot of reasons that people hold back too is that there's a concern. And am I late to this? Like, is it too late? Or is this thing going to go up anymore? Is this thing going to develop any further? Is this a huge bubble that I don't want to get involved in? And I think that's just not the case. I think all signs going to point to the fact that we are trying to digitize monetary systems across the globe. Really, technology doesn't often retreat. I really can't think of many examples, except for maybe Google Glasses. Technology doesn't really retreat back. It really expands at this huge exponential rate. So I think that we will see, it may look different in 10 years about, what people hold and everything, but I do think that cryptocurrency is here to stay. So I don't think anyone's, late to the game when it comes to crypto. I think it's just a matter of, I wish we had showed up earlier. So,
yeah. I've heard it compared to, this is like the early days of the internet. Like it got some popularity, but there were maybe like 5% of people, if that, online at that point. And people were like, this is huge. This is the best thing ever. And it's like, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's so much more to come.
So Tim,
there's this great interview with it's like David Letterman and Bill Gates on the Tonight Show or something. And he's like making fun of Bill Gates for being a fan of the internet. And it's just like, clearly we had no idea what it was going to be about. And I think we are seeing, actually Bitcoin is kind of matching the internet's adoption rate. I'd have to Google that to get you that chart, but the adoption rate among crypto is kind of matching that internet's history too.
Tim, for our listeners who maybe you mentioned that about, there are a lot of my dads out there who have questions. And if you were to go out to dinner with your dad, he knows nothing about crypto. Walk our listeners through what cryptocurrency is and the journey that it's taken over the last decade.
And especially just to add to that, especially from a Christian perspective, like, because you've paired two very unique things, it would seem, and you're trying to engage a Christian community about a topic that they're like, what? How would this apply to me? Or there's maybe even some stigma around it and some fear around it, is often the case.
I'm sure a good chunk of people just assume that cryptocurrency as a whole is the mark of the beast, So
right.
There's some of those misconceptions.
Sure. All right. You guys just basically asked me for my thesis statement. So if I drone on here, please interrupt me if there's any questions.
Have at it.
While I'm talking here. But so my kind of idea behind the crypto Christian and, that conversation with my dad got me to think a lot about our relationship with money and our relationship with God. And, I don't think many people disagree with these kind of basic concepts. And I don't even think you have to be a Christian necessarily either to kind of generally believe these are a good idea. But, God tells us, save your money, don't waste your money, spend it wisely, be a good steward of your resources, be a productive human being, and to, just generally, provide for your family, do good works, be generous, all these kind of things. But I think, mankind, we have a way of really just screwing everything up. And our monetary system does not reward savings. When we save our money in a bank account, if you put $1,000 away today, and, a year from now, I think they said inflation is about 7.9% right now. So, a year later, your $1,000 buys 7.9% less. So your purchasing power is being diminished. So we have God's word that says, save your money, spend wisely, all this. But then we have the world that, man has developed, and it punishes savings. You have less purchasing power. So, what's a Christian to do? Well, if your money is wasting away, I want to spend it as quickly as I possibly can. Or I want to invest it into things that I think will appreciate in value, and probably take on more risk than I normally would, because I know that I need to beat inflation and grow my assets in order to, have some kind of retirement someday, or pay for a kid's education or whatever. So now we're kind of put in this spot where, we're not being rewarded for saving. We're losing our purchasing power. Your offerings at church every Sunday have less and less ability to actually have an impact. So it's kind of like we're at odds with what God wants us to do. So I think that a fiat standard, what we're on, which is a dollar that isn't backed by anything, and we can print an unlimited amount of it, has kind of put Christians in this bad spot where we can't actually abide by God's word when it comes to money. So the cool thing about Bitcoin and some cryptocurrencies is that, Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million of them. So it is a capped supply. There is no individual, government, or corporation that will ever be able to, quote, print more Bitcoin. So we have scarcity, and we also have transparency. So there's a couple of verses, and I need to memorize these when I get onto a podcast like this, but there's a couple of verses where God talks about wanting to have proper weights and balances when doing business with each other. So the cool thing about crypto is that this is all on a public ledger. You and I can go back as far as 2009. We can view every single transaction that has ever occurred on the blockchain. You can't do that with the US dollar. There's these guys that hang out in this building called the Federal Reserve, and they get to kind of make the shots when it comes to how much they're printing, what they're adding to their balance sheet. So we have this system where there's a lot of kind of hidden secrets. We're not really sure what's going on behind the closed door. And we have this other system, while there's a lot to learn about it, we have total transparency into it, where we can see what's happening on the blockchain, and that we have some hard truths, knowing that there will only ever be 21 million. So to me, Bitcoin is a better version of sound money, and it rewards you. While it is volatile, it's only 13 years old. It's the world's most immature asset on the planet. But you are generally rewarded for saving your funds in Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies as well. Does that answer the question? I know that was a little long-winded.
Absolutely, yeah. So what are the things that Christians in particular then might be concerned with, that you are going to overcome some of those hurdles beyond even just, is it wise? Is it safe? Is it secure? Am I investing in something that's a Ponzi scheme or something like that? What other things are they going to have objections to, do you anticipate? And how are you going to overcome those?
Sure. Yeah. So that's one of the big ideas behind the Crypto Christian, is that it's going to be a resource and kind of educational center for people to learn about Bitcoin and crypto and all these things. So there's a lot of, kind of misconceptions and kind of natural concerns I think Christians are right to have when it comes to something like this. It sounds like it's promising something huge, and typically when something sounds too good to be true, it is. You guys talked about the mark of the beast. I think the US dollar is the mark of the beast. I think that they are the ones that have all the hidden agenda. I think they're manipulating things behind closed doors. Again, a lot of Christians think that, is Bitcoin and crypto, or is that only used for criminals? Is that just drugs and money laundering? So that's a big one that Christians have. That is not true. Less than 1% of Bitcoin's activity is used for crime. The US dollar remains the most popular currency for criminal organizations across the globe. I think the UN actually estimates, I think it's 2 to 5% of global economic activity is related to money laundering. So again, Bitcoin is already at less than 1%. But two, you also have this problem where criminals, if I'm trying to launder money and I have to enter, every single transaction that I do on this public ledger, as a criminal, you don't really have much of an incentive to just tell the whole world of like where you're sending your money, what wallets you're sending them to. Whereas, if you pay for things in cash or you launder it through a business, that's a lot smarter of a way to get around doing what you're trying to do. So this whole idea that, is crypto being used for crime? If criminals use Bitcoin for crime, like that's your fault, dude. You're going to get caught. So I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend the US dollar if that's what you're trying to do. So another one is, is crypto and Bitcoin mining, is this hurting the environment? So that's a big one. God, he's put us in charge of being a good steward of this planet too. So, is Bitcoin boiling the oceans, or is it, destroying the planet? So that's a big no as well. Bitcoin and crypto, they're doing probably one of the more underrated things about Bitcoin as of late is what it's doing to our energy grid. So as an example, Exxon just announced that they are mining Bitcoin now. So you think, well, why is this oil company mining Bitcoin? What do they sell oil and gas, right? Well, a lot of energy production in the United States, we actually produce more energy than we use. I think it's about like 14% or so. So when these oil and gas companies produce this excess energy, it costs a lot of money to store it. Or if they're going to ship it somewhere else, it costs a lot of money. So our energy grid is really not all that efficient. So what are you supposed to do with this? A lot of what oil and gas companies will do is that they'll flare it. That's a really big deal here in Texas, where they flare their excess energy production because they just can't afford to store it. So that releases methane into the atmosphere, and it's generally not good. You don't have to be a radical environmentalist to think, expelling gas into the air is not good, right? Like I think we can all generally agree with this. But instead of flaring, Exxon is now using that excess energy production to mine Bitcoin instead. So we're not having that methane being released into the atmosphere. Bitcoin miners are using excess energy. I think Georgia is the top state for Bitcoin mining right now. And they're using a lot of excess energy from solar power, from nuclear power, and from oil and gas too. But these are good things. They're making our energy grid more efficient. They're using energy that would have otherwise been expelled into the atmosphere in order to do something that's economically productive, create more jobs and build wealth for people. So that's a big misconception that I think Christians have. And I mean, the whole world has too about Bitcoin and crypto. Is it destroying the environment? Well, it's actually strengthening our power grid, and it's being used for productive purposes and saving us from expelling more methane into the air. So I think by the end of 2030, you'll see just about every oil and gas company mining Bitcoin because it's the most productive thing that they can do with that excess energy production.
Yeah, and they've got access to all this energy that is, in essence, free to them to use. So, like you're saying, why waste this? Why just get rid of it? Why not put it towards something? There's a lot of good reasons why you could take that energy and put it towards something else, especially if it can actually be stored in some form of value, for later use.
Yeah. And, it's kind of laughable to me too. Like, I think people like to paint this image of, someone in their basement just wasting tons of energy and like with a maniacal laughter, just destroying the planet. Like, that's just not at all the case. If you're, think about it. If you're a miner, you want to find the most efficient way possible to mine crypto. And you don't want to waste energy because you want to mine as much as possible. These people are incentivized to do this well. So Bitcoin miners and other crypto miners are doing their absolute best to find the ways to do it the cheapest, the ways to do it the most efficiently. And a lot of them are embracing renewable energy to do it too.
Yeah. I think it's because you have a generation of people who were raised on Captain Planet. And so in that show, the one thing I learned was everybody destroying the environment is doing it exclusively to destroy the environment, for
That's
that
right.
sake alone. So it's just like, I want to dump chemicals in the ocean. Why? That's what I do. I'm a bad guy.
Right. Being a bad guy for being a bad guy. Right. That's the impression that they want to make for Bitcoiners too.
Yeah.
Tim, I know my understanding of how cryptocurrency started was basically because there was a community of people, or one person who we don't know about, who basically wanted to create a decentralized coin or currency. Yeah. So that was why so many people got on board, is because they wanted the government out of their money. They wanted the government not to be able to touch their money. And but it seems like over the course of the last couple of years, there has been a lot of movement towards like regulation of cryptocurrency. And now I've heard two different, there's like crypto is kind of split into two different types of people. There's the people who are fighting to keep it decentralized, and then there are the people who are fighting for regulation, because regulation brings clarity and clarity brings more money, because people feel more comfortable with it and more people adopt it. So this is a personal question, not related to how Christians should respond to cryptocurrency, but what do you see going on in cryptocurrency? And I'm going to follow this up with a question, because the reason why I'm leading here is because I think, as far as Christians go, they are concerned that if there is what Scripture says about a one world currency, what Scripture said, like I think it looks pretty clear that could easily be digital currency, and with more regulation from the government, if we put all of our assets into cryptocurrency, it's going to be very, very easy for the government to seize it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess a few things on that is, this kind of debate between like total decentralization or regulation. So Bitcoin, they don't have a CEO. Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing department, which is crazy. In 13 years, it got a $1 trillion market cap without a CEO or marketing department or a PR agent, right? So I think it beat Apple and everything else. So pretty wild stuff. So Bitcoin is a fully decentralized cryptocurrency. Not all cryptocurrencies are. A lot like to claim they are, but if you have the majority of your nodes or miners operating out of an Amazon warehouse, you are not a decentralized cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin has the benefit of there are node and miner operations across the planet. Thousands and thousands of these people. So, if you wanted to theoretically shut down Bitcoin, you would have to get the United States, the European Union, Russia. We're currently arguing with them. China. You'd have to get the African nations together and try to shut down all of these node operators and Bitcoin miners. So good luck. I don't see that happening. But in terms of how people could, embrace regulation for cryptocurrency, so there's two different kinds. I think what you were getting to were CBDCs. So that's central bank digital currencies. So that's what CBDC stands for, central bank digital currencies. So in terms of just, regular cryptos right now, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever else, I think people will embrace some form of regulation because investors want certainty. With the Fed talking about raising rates and everything, we've had quite a downturn here in Q1 of 2022. And I think a lot of that just simply had to do with, we were kind of getting tugged around with, will the Fed raise rates? Will they not? How many times a year will they do it? All this, investors want certainty. So while I'm not exactly a big fan of the government getting involved and making a bunch of regulations, I do think that it will accelerate adoption. If, for instance, right now, if you sell a cryptocurrency that is a taxable event and it's capital gains, it would be nice if the government were to provide us with certain rules that said, this is a taxable event. If the sale of your asset is under this threshold, that is not a taxable event. Those kind of things will accelerate adoption, and that's when you're going to see bigger institutions getting involved. CBDCs, again, central bank digital currencies. This whole crypto space has an entirely new vernacular that we all have to learn up on. So CBDCs, that's something entirely different. China is probably one of the bigger leaders in this right now, which should probably scare you a little bit. They want to create this digital currency that their central bank issues. So this would offer them a few things. So there's a few good things that this would offer too, is that the speed at which you could transact would be lightning fast. You'd be able to transfer funds to a friend, to someone across overseas, pretty much instantaneously with much lower fees. Things like this are going to kill things like Western Union, where they have like a 10% fee on you sending, funds overseas. So that is a pretty exciting development, but that's also happening in other cryptos. But China, I suspect, would like to have a CBDC so they can track all of the behaviors and transactions of their citizens. This is kind of where it becomes frightening, where if you were hooked up to a CBDC and they say, well, you can spend this money on our approved list of things, food, rent, this gas station, not that gas station, can't buy this person's book. That's where it gets a little scary of, can central banks determine what their approved vendors are? Can they just freeze your account without giving you notice or warning? Can they just simply steal your assets? And then also you still have the same problem of inflation, where if they decided that they wanted to print another $1 trillion of this CBDC, well, then you're taking away the whole value proposition of Bitcoin. One part of the value proposition of Bitcoin, where it's a limited cap and it has that scarcity. So yeah, governments are exploring this, and I'm generally not a fan. I think it defeats a lot of the purpose behind having a decentralized currency and digital asset. Is that the beauty of decentralization is that it's really hard to manipulate. That a big bank or a really rich person or a government, they can't necessarily come in and manipulate the value of it. Whereas a CBDC, they'd have instant ability to.
Yeah, that'd be a great, I think, to break it down in a way that someone could understand it today if they're not familiar with cryptocurrency, is Bitcoin is basically what gold is for us. As you said, there cannot be any more of it than there already is, or than there will be mined. And then
Right.
a CBDC is basically the government's new version of what the dollar would be, where they could produce as much of it as they wanted to and control a little bit more of it. So would you tell, as cryptocurrency is starting to become more popular and more people are starting to become aware of it, would you tell people to what would you tell people in as far as how to invest their money into cryptocurrency, what to look for and what to stay away from?
Gotcha. And this is the part where I got to throw in that little, this is totally educational and informational. I am not a registered financial advisor, so please do your own research, guys. But in terms of where to get started, one, I would be just generally weary of CBDCs. I'm very skeptical of them. There are some countries that are kind of going on about these, and they're probably going to move forward with some form of it. Be wary about that, and certainly monitor it. In terms of other cryptos, really it's just about getting started. Taking your exposure from 0% to 1%, right? You don't have to mortgage the house to go buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or something like that.
Or Dogecoin, like so many people did.
or Doge.
It's going to the moon. It's going to the moon.
The really cool part about crypto is that one of the components of sound money is divisibility. So, a good quality of money, we've, over the course of our history, we've used gold, we've used seashells, we've used cigarettes, we've used, paper money, we've used poppies. We've used kind of everything, right? Divisibility is really important because we got to make change at the grocery store. We have to make change at the gas station. Bitcoin is the most divisible asset on the planet. I think it's made up of 100 million Satoshis. That's the lowest denominator of a Bitcoin. So People are like, oh, do I have to buy a whole Bitcoin? Isn't it worth $44,000 right now? No, you can literally buy 5 cents if you want to. Probably not worth the transaction fee on a exchange, but you could do that if you want to. So, you do not have to have, 45 grand to get started in crypto by any means. You can start with $10. So I want to dispel that myth. But really, I would just kind of get started on your research and figure out which ones of these are decentralized, which one is a good one to, have a long-term future that'll be around. And then typically too, there are a lot of scammers in the cryptocurrency space. People trying to do these fly-by-night, NFTs or altcoins that just have no real value to them. I'm not opposed to all altcoins or NFTs necessarily, but I do want to make sure that they actually do provide some level of value and that they're legitimate. But one thing I would warn Christians about too is that, again, that feeling of like, was I too late to this? No. And I think a lot of what people do is they think, oh, I'm too late to Bitcoin. I'll go find some cryptocurrency that's, that cost me 4 cents to buy. And I'll just hope that that blows up to $1 and I'll have made my millions and I'll retire, right? The stories that we hear about people succeeding in Bitcoin are far more popular than the ones and the more common ones of people blowing it all, right? Where they lost their shirt on buying some kind of altcoin where they lost all their money.
Nobody ever brags about their losses.
Right. They're a lot more quiet about it. It's kind of like, how gamblers work, right? You could hear their victories all day long, but never really hear about those bad nights where they come home with nothing in hand. So yeah, I would just warn, use patience, use due diligence, do the research, and you don't have to start with $1,000. You don't have to start with $100. You can start with $5 if you want to. So I would just say get started and start learning about it.
So you've talked about Bitcoin quite a bit. You did mention some altcoins, or that there are altcoins. Are there altcoins? Yeah. And again, none of us are financial advisors, so do your own research. But are there any altcoins that you think, oh yeah, they actually, I've researched their platform, they have a good thing going, or this one is quite interesting, the project, what they're trying to accomplish. Is there anything else like that?
Yeah, so I own a few different alts. I am much more of a Bitcoiner than anything else. I just believe in that value proposition so much more. However, I do think that, so Bitcoin is on the Bitcoin blockchain. Ethereum is another example of a blockchain network, and they have their own token called ETH, which they operate on. And I think it's about 60% of all cryptocurrency projects are actually built on top of the Ethereum network. So that's where a lot of our altcoins come from. So to me, I just kind of separate the two to say that Bitcoin is solving monetary problems and other altcoins are solving different kinds of problems. So I do separate the two in that sense. But there are some cryptocurrency projects that are pretty interesting in what they're trying to solve. So there are some pretty interesting ones out there. I would suggest if someone was like really trying to first learn, start with just layer 1 protocols. And a layer 1 protocol is something like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Avalanche, Solana. That's where people are building projects on top of. And that's just their kind of initial network that people are building. So that's probably a good place to start your research and kind of figure out what altcoins are valuable and which ones you just want to skip out on. But if you also go to, I think it's called CoinGecko, that's kind of an encyclopedia of all the different cryptocurrency projects. It's basically the Wikipedia of crypto. If you're like really looking to get started and kind of learn about some certain token, that's probably a good place to get started and learn a little information too.
Do you have any like YouTubers or any bloggers or anyone other than cryptochristien.com, of course, anybody that comes to mind that you just think, oh yeah, they're solid. Their knowledge of this space is really good. I would highly recommend them without being a financial advisor, of course.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I've heard such good things about that Crypto Christian website. So
Yes.
Yeah, it's so good.
Definitely check that one out.
So good.
Yeah, in terms of other people that I think are worth looking into to really learn about the space, if you were to YouTube Anthony Pompliano, he's a really good resource in terms of learning about Bitcoin. Vitalik Buterin, he's the founder of the Ethereum Foundation. You really do, if you want to learn more about the cryptocurrency space, altcoins and everything, you should really do your homework on what Ethereum is too. So those are two really good places to look. And then I also consider Michael Saylor to be an excellent spokesperson for the value propositions of Bitcoin too. So, YouTubing those three individuals, that's really going to set you down a big rabbit hole. So, block out an afternoon, because you're going to have a lot of time spent on YouTube learning about this. But those are three really good resources.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that advice, because I think no matter what we're investing in, especially as Christians, the goal is not to just put our money in something so that we can hurry up and quickly get rich. You, as a wise financial investor of anything, or a wise steward of your money, you do really want to know what you are investing in and why you're investing in it, because other than that, it's just not an educated decision, which means it's not being a wise steward of the resources that God has given us.
There is something to be said too. If you're coming from an investment background in the stock market, let's say, and you're used to small shifts in value, you need to brace yourself, because you would jump into the cryptocurrency world and you would probably have a heart attack. And now, I think that was us when we first got in. It's like, oh my gosh, we just lost 50%. And then, oh my gosh, we just gained, 100% on this asset. So the swings are pretty big, because it's still so early in the adoption phase. And you have all these people who are going, oh, this is the next hot thing. Oh, I'm going to jump to this one. I'm going to jump to that one. What kind of advice would you give to a Christian who's going, oh man, that just seems unstable? Like my 5% a year in Apple or something would be a far better investment.
And does it rhyme with smaller cost averaging?
That's
dollar
right.
cost averaging.
Love that. Yeah. So
leading question.
Dollar cost averaging is a really good way to go into this. So what dollar cost averaging is that instead of saying, okay, I've got $1,000 here, I'm going to put it all in at once. That's more so a strategy. So where you say, okay, you know what? Over the course of the next few months, I'm going to add $100 in a week. That way you're getting different price points. So that way you're not missing, something. Well, it's the worst thing is, right, you put $1,000 in, second day, it just tanks 50%. And you're, oh, what have I done? But if you had done dollar cost averaging, you would have put $100 in at that high, but then next week you would have gotten that 50% dip. So that way you're getting more of the asset when you're buying. So, Bitcoin and crypto, again, this is a 13-year-old asset. This is a brand new asset class. So it's the most immature one in existence right now.
Like most 13-year-olds are. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So there are some pretty big swings right now. We are seeing some cryptos starting to match the S&P a little bit more in terms of parity of swings. I do think that as we go on here, we'll start to see less volatility, but just kind of steadily growing in value, because there will be less, right now, I think, especially Bitcoin, there's lows in terms of inventory available on exchanges. So eventually there will be a supply crunch that I think we'll see on these exchanges. So that way, actually purchasing will become a little bit harder, and therefore the price will go up. But yeah, it is definitely volatile, and it's not something, and I would say this about the stock market, gold or real estate or anything else. But, if you are not willing to hold on to something for 10 years, I'm stealing Warren Buffett's quote here. I think it's him. But if you aren't willing to hold on for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 seconds. This is not a short-term play. Again, you're not going to try to pay off your mortgage next week, right? That's not how Christians invest. We want to have patience. We want to invest in things that are creating value for people, and to know that, it's in God's hands, and we're hoping to have, long-term gains. So, no, this is something that do not invest in crypto if you're thinking that you're going to sell it next week, because that is, yeah. And these people that are, buying and selling it on the daily basis, you're just creating taxable events for yourself that you will have to report to the IRS. And they will take as much as they possibly can. So, definitely hold it as long as you possibly can if you're going to invest.
That has been something we have been addressing recently, is using some of the available tools that are out there to track your crypto sales and purchases. We're using a site called coinly.io, but there are several. There's CoinTracker and others. And as you begin to look at your losses, but also your gains, and then you see, oh my goodness, I'm going to be paying this in taxes. Oh gosh, this, your advice is spot on to people in general. For if you're going to invest in something, what Warren Buffett said, hold it for 10 years, hold it for a while, let those capital gains fall off if they can. And then you can use it for something else. And this, I think, bears mentioning too. You can actually invest in cryptocurrency in your IRAs, your investment retirement accounts now.
Yeah.
And that is something like you can put it in there. And if you do something, not to get too crazy into the weeds, but if you do a Roth IRA, you can put post-tax money into the account. And as it grows, when it comes out, you don't pay any taxes on that. However, the catch is you have to wait until retirement, which is, 55 and a half years old or something along those lines. So but if you're putting that money in and you're doing that on a regular basis, you can put up to like $6,000 a year, and you're doing that in a sort of a dollar cost average in a yearly way. Mm-hmm. You might be sitting on quite the retirement nest egg on some of these other platforms. Yeah. So I just want to get that out there too.
I think a lot of people also don't understand that they actually probably do have some exposure to crypto. If you just own the S&P 500 and an index fund, you have exposure to Bitcoin. There are companies in the S&P 500 that have Bitcoin on their balance sheets. I think it's Mass Mutual, Tesla has it, MicroStrategies. There are companies that are adding this to their balance sheet. So you'd be surprised that you probably do have exposure to crypto and don't realize it. And I think that will continue to be a trend. But yeah, adding it into your IRA, that's a really great way to be in a tax-friendly environment. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, right, one of the leading indicators of results is not indicators, but part of your investment returns is having tax efficiency. So, selling something within a year's time is not a good way of exercising tax efficiency. So that's a really important part of investing, is making sure that you're not spending as much as possible with the IRS.
Well, Tim, where can people find you, and what is in store for your platform, and what do you have planned in the future?
Yeah. So go to thecryptochristien.com. We are launching here in late April or in May, depending upon, last minute website edits and everything too. So I'm sure that'll be a fun panic the night before. So looking forward to it. But yeah, thecryptochristien.com. And then you just find us on social media by searching us on Twitter or Facebook for The Crypto Christian. You'll find us too.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Tim, for being here. That was really educational. I think a lot of people are going to find benefit in learning more and checking out ChristianCrypto.com.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys inviting me too.